right? Which I know sounds not so appealing, but that means that he was mixing poultry with dairy. The two main legal principles that the rabbis seem to be afraid of, they know that chickens don't make milk, right? But what they're afraid of is, one, it's called ma'arit ayin. You don't need to know that phrase, but it's appearance, right? And what it looks like you're doing. And they said chicken looks enough like meat that if you're eating chicken with dairy, someone walking by might think that you're eating milk and meat. And the other is, I don't know the Hebrew phrase, but it's what it might lead you to do, right? If you're in the custom of eating chicken parmesan, the odds of your being confused and eating veal parmesan are much higher than if you just don't eat any of it. Eggplant parmesan, you're okay, right? All right, so that's where the milk and meat comes from, and that's what it's become. I think it's waiting, some say 3 hours after meat. The traditional Israeli is usually 6 hours after meat before eating dairy. After eating dairy, it's much shorter. Most say about 30 minutes. Some say you really just have to rinse your mouth out after dairy. I think this is another joke, although I'm not sure how joke it is. I think it's because a lot of us are lactose intolerant, and they know the milk goes right through anyway. I thought that was fun. Okay. I have everything here about slaughter. I'm not going to talk about slaughter, but even within, you can read it. You don't need to know it. But when you see kosher meat, right, we know that beef is cow is a kosher animal. Chicken is a kosher animal. So for a lot of, and within the Reform movement, you'll have Jews all across the spectrum. Okay? There are Reform Jews who will eat anything, and that's fine. That's a decision that's been made, and within the realm of Reform, there's nothing wrong with that. I grew up not eating pork or shellfish, right? We would eat any beef, we would eat any chicken, we would mix milk and meat, but the way that we limited our diet in a Jewish way was not eating pork or shellfish. There's another, I don't want to say another level, but another element, which is how the animal's slaughtered. And that's when you see kosher meat today. It has to do with the cutting of the main artery, right? Is it a quicker, more painless death? I don't know. I haven't experienced any of them. But it's what we're taught as a kosher slaughter. There's no special blessing said over the animal. There's no... it's really how it's killed. And we saw that you can't eat with the lifeblood in it. I said that probably means an animal while it's still living. But if we look at, where did I have it? Oh, page 3. Pass the bloodwurst, please. And you must not consume any blood, either of bird or of animal in any of your settlements. Anyone who eats blood shall be cut off from his kin. So what happens to kosher meat? A, it's slaughtered in a certain way. B, after it's slaughtered, all the blood is drained out. Okay? Now I think that usually happens in non-kosher meat as well. They're not going to give you, something with a full bloody artery, right? So the blood is drained out. That happens in all meat. But there's an added step in kosher meat. It's salted. Okay? And what the salting does is draw out as much blood as possible. Chicken or turkeys are brined. So a lot of times you'll see people buying kosher turkeys not for Thanksgiving, not because they're Jewish, not because they keep kosher, but because they would brine their turkey anyway, because that's how they like their turkey, and it's done for them. The other thing in kosher chicken and poultry, and I think the way that they remove feathers from chickens is they dunk them in hot water and then pull the feathers out. Huh? Yeah. In a kosher chicken, I don't know if it's that the cooking process can't start, I'm not 100%
Can't do it with
sure.
the guts, with the guts and all, you can't cook.
Yeah, so that's not allowed. You can still get the feathers out, but it's a much harder process. So a lot of times in kosher chicken or turkeys, you'll see little pieces just at the ends of the feather. I eat them, it doesn't bother me. Some people just won't eat the skin on kosher chicken or turkeys, which is more healthy anyway. So again, within the realm of reform, you really see everything. You see people who won't eat it and who will eat anything. You see people who won't eat pork. You see people who won't eat shellfish. You see people who won't eat pork and shellfish. You see people who won't mix milk and meat. You see people who just won't eat a cheeseburger. You see people who will follow all the laws of kashrut but don't worry about kosher meat. So I left you, when we were doing Shabbat, what I left you with, if you want to make Shabbat a part of your life, how can you do it, right? It doesn't have to be about whether or not you flick lights on or off, right? For Shabbat, it was about doing something you don't normally do, not doing something you normally do, and doing something special. And I highly encourage making candles and Kiddush part of that, right? For kashrut, right, there's definitely something special about doing the Jewish way, right? But I also really believe that if you're going to say, I'm only going to eat, and I'm not saying you have to do anything, okay? But I think if you're going to say, I don't buy kosher meat, I don't get it, and I don't like it, and the kosher meat industry has corruption just like every other industry, sometimes worse. And there was a huge scandal in not all kosher meat, but this one major plant is terrible. It's gone now. But anyway, right? I don't buy kosher meat, but I'm only going to eat organic meat. Maybe I've studied. I'm not endorsing organic meat. I don't know. Right? If you make that decision, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it because of my Judaism, right? Then I think that's a Jewish decision. Right? If you say, I'm not going to eat fast food because I want to limit what I eat because I don't want to eat just like the animals eat and eat everything. Right? That's great. So there are lots of different ways to do it. But let's say that kashrut isn't for you at all. Right? You want to eat the pork, you want to eat the shrimp, you want to mix. Fine. Is there a way that you can eat Jewishly? Yeah. What does our tradition give us? Before and after every meal, blessings, right? Now people might look at you a little strange if you're saying motzi over your ham and cheese sandwich, right? But I don't have a problem with it, right? And I don't remember to do every meal, but also with our home ritual, every single food, not just bread, and I can bring you a list next week, there is a blessing before every single food that we might eat. Okay? And there's a different blessing for fruit, a different blessing for vegetables, a different blessing for bread, a different blessing for bread-ish products that aren't bread, and then there's a blessing for everything else. Okay? And we have that can be said anytime you're going to eat. And then the only blessing, by the way, the only blessing commanded in the Torah. This isn't commanded, this isn't commanded. None of the blessings, motzi isn't commanded. There's only one blessing commanded in the Torah. It says, Ve'achalta usavata uverachta et Adonai Elohecha. You shall eat, you shall be satiated, and you shall bless the Lord your God. So the only blessing commanded in the Torah is what's called birkat, a word we know. Hamazon, which is the blessing of the meal, which is the blessing that's said after we've finished our meal. And I didn't think of that as a home ritual. That's a good one. So I can bring you guys a copy next week or whenever. Okay? So I think that's a pretty good summary of both some of the ways to bring Jewish ritual into the home and also how food became an important part and how it's understood now. Kosher wine is a whole different story, and I'll do that another time. Yeah?
So do you only eat kosher meat that's been ritually slaughtered?
I personally, about 9 years ago, started going through a process. As I was studying, it started with the blood thing, whatever reason it is, that kind of it says it right there, right? So the best way to do that for me was kosher meat. I started off only doing it with red meat, and I've switched to chicken also, so I personally only eat kosher meat, which I'll tell you, talk about limitation, for me, right, still eating meat, it's caused me to eat less meat, because kosher meat's harder to get and it's expensive, right? So it's caused me to only eat meat, a few times a month, which it's not why I do it, but it's had what I'd say positive benefit for me. And then I don't mix dairy with the meat that it goes with, right? So I won't eat dairy with beef, but I will with chicken. I can't do it anywhere other than home, and that's kind of that's the way that I've made my reform kashrut, and I don't have multiple sets of dishes. I do have one that's microwavable and one that's not microwavable, but I eat both milk and dairy off of both of them. But again, that's what I do, and I don't say that's what one should do or that anyone, but it's it's worked. It's worked for me. Yeah.
Is there any places closer to St. Pete to get the kosher meat?
I think Chabad. You can
We started
order.
that deli.
Well, if you Publix, the Greenwise has actually fresh kosher meats most of the time. It's more expensive than Joel's.
A big selection.
Any particular
Okay,
ones?
Costco.
The one near us doesn't.
The one on,
Yeah, Costco has kosher.
Yeah.
Oh,
All Publix has frozen.
a big selection.
Yeah.
Frozen?
Yeah.
Meat products. Okay.
Kosher dairy. When you see kosher cheese is made with animal rennet. So kosher cheese is made without animal rennet. In conservative and I mean in Reform too, what most say is that once it becomes rennet, it's really not meat anymore. Same thing with gelatin, right? Gelatin isn't kosher because it kind of, we don't need to say
A lot of it's made with
But-
pig.
Huh?
A lot of it's made with pig though.
So, some won't eat gelatin. It's hard, right? And am I okay? I believe that the word kadosh, which means holy, also means separate. Okay, and that's really what it means. And my personal belief is that a lot of these laws really were given to us to keep us separate, right? If we can't eat with them, if we can't do business with them, which we can't do because, right, one of their main days of business, we don't do business, right? Then we're not going to marry them. See, I'm bringing it back to your first session. And we're going to maintain our specialness, right? So for me, coming from a liberal progressive perspective, my question is, how can we do the holy without the separate, right? So when I decided I was going to keep a form of kosher, it was really important to me that I could go into anyone's home and eat, that I could go into any restaurant and eat, right? Maybe not eat anything I wanted, but that it wasn't going to keep me away from other people. What makes me sad is and I know I usually talk about being open and not, but I'll share this with you, and this is my own opinion. When I see someone who decides they're going to keep kosher, and it keeps them from eating in their parents' home, right? That's when I say, this can't be what was intended. Now there are people who separate dishes, separate everything, but figure out a way to eat in their family's home, to eat, wherever they are, and that's okay. So that was home ritual, that was kashrut. We understand kind of, even though we're not supposed to ask why, I kind of gave you a few whys.